I used to say that my being crippled was from a football injury. That's bullshit. It's age.
Mr. Price, I wanted to read something here. This was I thought, a rather nicely limned phrase from the New York World Telegram describing, critiquing your performance in Dragonwyck. It said here, Vincent Price, who has become Hollywood's great master of these roles of slinking, suave villainy, bolsters his standing still further as he moves through the turbulence of this picture. What do you think of that?
I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
I always like good notices. They're always good. No, I loved working on Dragonwyck for a lot of reasons. It was about the third time that I'd worked with Gene, who I really think was one of the few actresses who isn't dated in any way. There's something extraordinary about her. She just is there. She's today. With the picture you're going to see in Laura, it's really incredible. She isn't dated at all. Her hair looks modern, her clothes look modern, you know, everything is modern about Jean because she was such a good actress.
There's a tremendous rapport between the two of you.
Yes.
You must have enjoyed working with one.
We did 5 pictures together and we got along superbly. She used to say that I was her favorite leading man. Of course she was lying, but I let her do it.
Now this was the first directorial effort of Joseph Mankiewicz, who of course at that point was already quite a well-recognized producer and writer. Yeah. What was it, but you of course a veteran of a number of years in Hollywood at that point, was there any uncertainty or any any questions of Mr. Mankiewicz in his directorial role as far as you were concerned as an actor?
I think Joe had his mind made up. But since he wrote the script and was also, after Mr. Lubitsch was sick, you know, he was the producer at the beginning of the picture, and then he had a heart attack and they took him off the picture. And Joe really acted as producer, director, writer, and everything. And I think he did a superb job. Now, he knew exactly what he wanted, and I think he got exactly what he wanted. I know the most difficult thing that he wanted from me was that I should be terribly thin. And I weighed about 200 pounds at that point, and I got down to about 180 to get this part. And I was thin. I just was so hungry on the picture all the time. And I looked that way, I tell you. That's why I cooked her that cake. With the oleanders in it. I've got the recipe if any of you want.
Well, I noticed that they didn't even let you finish the salad dressing in that one scene. It seems to me that there were, I know it's been many years since you made the picture, but there were some questions that I had about the possibility of some scenes that might have been shot but didn't make it into the final cut. And there's this one dramatic scene at the very end when the fact that Mr. Van Ryn has murdered his wife becomes quite clear to Gene Tierney, and she says something about, oh, you've been, or something is really amiss, and you're hearing the music. You are hearing something in that scene where he's become distracted with the ghostly presence of the singing down by the piano. And she says something about how his daughter had really heard something in that earlier scene, and you must have been listening even when the night that our son, and then she's interrupted, and there's no further explanation as to the night, what she means by the night that our son. Does that ring? Does that ring?
Yes.
So that night.
Yes, that was the night. No, there were several things cut in the picture that were very disturbing. For some unknown reason, Mr. Zanuck, who was the head of the studio, did not like a scene in which I explained about the oleander that it was such a perfect thing that it had a right to be deadly. And it's a funny kind of subtle thing, but there was a whole scene in the greenhouse where with the count, you know, the German count that comes over, about this deadly plant that is so beautiful and so right, and its nature should be deadly. And Zanuck didn't understand that, and Lubitsch was furious. They had a terrible fight about it. And Joe wanted it in because it explained Nicholas Van Ryn's whole motivation in life was that anything that was second-rate deserved to be eliminated out of his life. And he was a monomaniac in a funny way. Of course, in the book, he doesn't die that way at all. But that was the days with censorship when you had to see the person, the villain, the bad man, killed by the law. And actually the book ends with a terribly exciting scene of a race down the Hudson River between two steamboats. And there's this terrible explosion and many people are thrown overboard, and Van Ryn becomes a funny sort of anti-hero in that he rescues a great many people and other people he lets die. I wish we could have done that, but that wasn't allowed.
Well, given the censorship of the time, I thought it was rather daring that they would allow you actually to the character to say quite overtly, "I have become a drug addict."
Yeah.
That must have given the Breen office some nervousness.
It really is true. I never sort of thought about it to begin with, the thing about censorship. In a funny way, I've gone back to thinking that some of it was very good, that today there's just too much permissiveness, and that scenes are unnecessarily dirty and smutty and vulgar and sadistic, and there was a kind of reign, something that held on to good taste in a funny way through censorship. But it was very funny. I know one of the best scenes I ever had in a picture when I first started, I had with a wonderful English actress who had very large bosoms. And in those days you wore moline, it was called, across here so that you shouldn't see the cleavage. But this lady was very proud of her front, and she leaned over too far and you could see heaven and earth. And the scene was cut out. And it was my best scene in the picture. So I think censorship had its point.
I'm sure there must be some questions of Vincent Price from those of you in the audience. Anybody like to? Yes.
No, it was an extraordinary story, actually. Reuben Mamoulian directed the first 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks. Otto was the producer. We all really loved Mamoulian. He was a wonderful man, a very gentle and dear man, and a very, very good director. But there was something that Otto did not like as the producer about Mamoulian's direction. And so one day we were called up and said, when you come to work on Monday, we'll start with the first scene in the picture. They changed cameramen for unknown reason, because the cameraman was a very good one, but Joe Lachelle took it over, won the Academy Award. And there was this funny thing that we went back and started right from the beginning. I think there's one scene left, is Clifton typewriting in the bathtub. Because we couldn't figure out what was different when Otto took over the direction of the picture. There was something just very subtly different in everybody's performances. And after it was all over, I went up to Otto one day and I said, what did you see that you didn't like about Mamoulian's direction? And he said, well, you see, Mamoulian's a nice man. I'm not. He said, my friends are the kind of people that you are. Evil. And they are. All of them are terribly, they belong to what I call the upper scum of New York society. They're terrible sort of sophisticated people who underneath are basically bad. You know, even the cop in Laura, there's something a little kinky about him too, you know. But Otto understood these kind of people. He said, these are my friends. I know these kind of people. And he did, and that's the wonderful thing about Laura. It's one of the things that makes it so superb. I think the reason that it's lasted so wonderfully is because of Raxon's music, which is just superb. Probably one of the greatest songs ever written. Probably one of the greatest songs ever written. Scores ever written, and later a song with Johnny Mercer lyrics. And the superb direction of Otto. And of course, Gene Tierney. this extraordinary beauty. Without that, and without the sort of datelessness of Gene, you wouldn't believe the story of Laura. But she is just superb. Yeah.
Right here.
Mr. Price, I'm wondering what your thoughts were like when you viewed yourself in these various pictures.
Nausea. No, there's some of them that I really sit there and think, my God, you are beautiful. My God, you are beautiful. But there are other ones where you sit there like this, you know. For the most part, I've had one hell of a good time. I really have. I've done all kinds of pictures, and the thing that really tickles me most about these evenings, these next 3 nights, tonight and tomorrow and Sunday, is that they let me choose different kinds of parts. Different comedy, very far-out comedy, and Champagne for Caesar, and kind of spooky ones, and kind of corny ones, and they let me choose the whole thing because I've had a wonderful time. I've had more varied fun. And I had the wonderful fun after I became known as a villain of being able to make fun of myself on the Red Skelton show and the Jack Benny show. And I just had a wonderful time. I loved it. I loved the business. Yeah.
There's always seems to be a humorous undercurrent, even in the darkest roles. Is that more your input, or did the directors seek that out of you? Do you have that kind of
I think basically, I think everybody's a villain. All good men are villains underneath. You can tell it by just reading the paper every day. And I think that basically villains don't think of themselves as bad. You know, they think of themselves as nice, normal kids who just happen to lop off a few heads every now and then or shoot somebody. And so underneath it, they're getting away with it until they get caught. And I think they rather enjoy it. And I've always tried to sort of give that feeling. I think maybe that's why my villains have sort of lasted a bit longer than some of this kind, you know.
One last question before we have to break. Yes.
Colorization, I love black and white. My God, you know, when you see this film and Laura, I never know when they've colorized it. It just looks icky, you know. It's like a box of bad candy.
And you'd know about bad candy given the family
sure
that
would.
you came from. Well, we want to thank you for coming to be with us on this opening night. We're going to have you back in a few minutes to launch Laura, and thank all of you, and hope to see you for the rest of the weekend as well.
Come and see some of them. Thank you a million times.